All right, come on, let's sing the Thunder song.
All right.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in snowy, frigid Fort Collins, Colorado. Today we're going to be talking about the Trenton Thunder, a collegiate summer level team that plays in the MLB Draft League. They are based, of course, in Trenton, New Jersey. Later on in this episode, I'll be speaking with designer Dan Simon of Studio Simon, who created the logos for the Trenton Thunder. I will be speaking with Scott Rippey of Rippeyology to talk about some weather phenomenon. And, of course, Dan Simon will be back once again with one of his Studio Simon Stumper trivia questions. Right now, I am so happy to have the radio broadcaster for the Trenton Thunder, Mike Warren. Mike, good morning. How are you doing?
Doing great, doing great. Thanks so much for having me on, and looking forward to talking about the Thunder and talking about some minor league baseball with you, Paul.
Absolutely. Well, this Trenton Thunder brand is one that has been around a long time, and it's a classic in the world of minor league baseball. We were just talking before we started the recording here. I am embarrassed to say I grew up in the Philadelphia area and have never made it to a Trenton Thunder game. So that is on me, and it is something that I plan to fix in the 2025 season. So my heartfelt apologies for never having been to a Trenton Thunder game.
No, no need to apologize. We're going to change that definitely in 2025, and looking forward to having you out to the ballpark, and definitely looking forward to this season as a whole. A lot of exciting stuff coming up, and we definitely need to make sure that we get you out to the ballpark this year, Paul.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like I said, the brand is fantastic. It's a classic minor league baseball brand. I always like to jump in with this. How come a team in Trenton, New Jersey is called the Trenton Thunder? What does that Thunder name mean to the Trenton area?
So it all goes back to the original logo. I feel there's kind of a toughness, a tenacity that goes with being from Trenton, and the meaning of the logo as well. There were three original pillars, and they talked about, one of the core ones being toughness of the city and being the capital city. And they take a lot of pride in that in Trenton. So, toughness is a big thing when you talk about the people that make up the city of Trenton, the backbone of this city. Toughness is definitely the first word that comes to mind. Resiliency, and there is so much just beyond baseball in Trenton that resembles that. So there's a lot that goes into the meaning of the logo that is so much deeper than what people might see from when they first, one, hear the name, but two, see the logo as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll tell you, growing up in the East Coast, thunderstorms in the summertime are no joke. I mean, I know that everyone sort of talks about the weather that they have in different places, but man, those mid-Atlantic thunderstorms are no jokes. So when I look at that, right, like I see, it conjures something about that New Jersey environment there. Is the actual like weather event itself sort of part of the story that the team tells?
I think over these last couple of years, if you were to ask some members in the front office, and specifically some members that pull tarp on a consistent basis, they would attest that there's definitely some ties to the storms in the area and the weather consistency in the area, with kind of correlating with the logo as well. These past couple of years, yeah, we've seen some crazy storms, and when you're near the Delaware River, those storms can be affected in a number of different ways. They can be pulled out away from you. They could be pushed in. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of weather, and definitely a lot that it helps fit the name for sure, with the thunderstorms that roll into the area as well.
This team obviously is one of the teams that was affected pretty severely by the Major League Baseball shakeup, the Bogon Destructor Fleet hostile takeover of minor league baseball. Previously, this team was a Double-A affiliate of the Yankees, and before that, the Red Sox and the Tigers. And now playing at the collegiate summer level, but with the same brand, with the same identity, and this team name, and this consistency, this brand equity that has existed since 1994. What is that transition like, going from Double-A to collegiate summer level, but with the same brand, the same identity, the same sort of persona of that team?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the first things that was actually said to me when I accepted the offer to be the voice of the Trenton Thunder was, this is a double A operation in the draft league, and that's kind of how we approach it. There's a lot of our front office personnel have been here for 10 plus, 15 plus, 20 plus years. They know what it's like to be an affiliated team, and they know what it takes to get back to that, and that's always the goal. What we've done in the draft league, I think if you look around, if you look around other teams that are in collegiate leagues and semi-professional leagues in the summer, the numbers that we're putting up attendance wise, revenue wise, it's tough to match that with teams that are not affiliated. So, what we're doing, the brand that the Thunder have cultivated, what the Thunder are doing with that, it's impressive every single day. The new ideas that we get to hear in meetings and the big ideas team that comes up with these great events from a night to night basis on our schedule, from that to coming up with new alternate identities. We had a new alternate identity debuted this past season, the Goldens. That was fantastic. I'm sure we'll delve into that a little bit. The pork roll that we talked about very briefly before the recording started, which is, when you think about New Jersey, you think about pork roll. And yes, it is pork roll. It is not Taylor ham. It's pork roll. And that is an identity of the Thunder that, has really gravitated and cultivated many in the area. And there's so much merchandise that goes behind that. And for us, for the Thunder as an organization, the goal is always to get affiliated again. But we take a lot of pride in being in the draft league. This is our league. We talk about that a lot as well. And it's a fun league. There is a lot of talent that is coming into this league. And I tell people this all the time, you might not see a major league affiliate at this ballpark right now, but that does not mean the quality of baseball is still not here in Trenton, New Jersey. And regardless of if we're affiliated or not, the operation remains the same. The standard remains the same. And the brand continues to grow. So that's something that we the Thunder definitely take a lot of pride in, for sure.
All right, you know that I was going to delve into this, and you beat me to the punch here. Trenton lives right on that border, I think, between pork roll and Taylor ham territory. You all jumped in with 2 feet, and you have this pork roll identity, very much not Taylor ham. And for the uninitiated, pork roll is essentially a breakfast meat that's just like what it sounds like. It's essentially processed pig product. And I would say north of Trenton, they call it Taylor ham, closer to New York and in North Jersey, and south of Trenton in the Philadelphia area, and down around Atlantic City, Ocean City, where I go every summer, it's very much pork roll rather than Taylor ham. Trenton is in that sort of middle zone there. I would say the dividing line between Taylor ham country and pork roll country is Six Flags Great Adventure, right in the middle of New Jersey there. You jumped right in, right? Like you jumped right in with it's pork roll. Tell me your feelings about that. Is Trenton really is it pork roll country, or is it was it controversial when that team came into being?
It's pork roll country through and through, Paul. I mean, this is from the jump of when this alternate identity first came about. That was I'm sure one of the first talking points. I know for a fact it was that solidifying the brand, committing to a side, and knowing that yes, it is pork roll. If you do some nitty gritty research, you will find that Taylor is a brand of pork roll. So Taylor ham is a brand of pork roll. We at the Thunder, they have a sponsorship with Case's Pork Roll. There's a stand at Trenton Thunder Ballpark called Pork Roll Paradise. Every Friday at Trenton Thunder Ballpark is Pork Roll Friday, $2 pork roll sandwiches. The Thunder transform into the Thunder pork roll, and they wear special pork roll themed jerseys and hats. Our mascot Slice comes out for that night, and he's a part of the whole fun and shenanigans with Boomer and Cloudman. It is 100% pork roll. There's no other way to say it other than that. Your team pork roll, or you're on that other side over there. We don't even address the other name for it, because that's how hard we ride with pork roll at the Trenton Thunder and at Trenton Thunder Ballpark. And I have just about every on-field hat possible over the last couple years for for the pork roll. So yeah, it is 100% pork roll.
Fantastic. Well, I agree. You and I, you're not going to get any disagreement from me on that. So and I appreciate that detailed explanation. That pork roll is the umbrella term, and Taylor ham is a variety of it.
Well, we
Um,
also at Trenton Thunder Ballpark each year in September we host it's a major league eating event. It's the National Pork Roll Eating Contest at Trenton Thunder Ballpark. Joey Chestnut has made an appearance there over the years. And we actually offer throughout certain points during the season, if you go to Pork Roll Paradise at a certain game and purchase an item, you'll get a ticket to Riverfest where you can come out to the ballpark. It's usually around September 20th, around that range. And yeah, a lot of great events. You get to see professional eaters compete, but cornhole, wiffle ball, whole bunch of different events. A nice, beautiful day at the ballpark after the season's done. You get to go down on the field, and I got to meet Joey Chestnut a couple years ago. Great guy, really nice guy. A bunch of other professional eaters that you see during the hot dog eating contest as well. They come out, and it's a cool event. It's a lot of fun.
well, wiffle ball and cornhole and a pork roll eating contest sounds pretty amazing. You mentioned also, and you're right, we're definitely going to talk about this. Another alternate that you all unveiled is the Goldens. And
Yes.
this is, at first you're like, oh, it's an homage to golden retrievers. Well, Trenton obviously has a long and storied history with bat dogs. Bat dogs are pretty prevalent these days. You all have had a long storied tradition of bat dogs, and in particular golden retrievers, and you paid homage to them with this Golden's brand. What's the story behind that?
Yeah. So it all starts with our long lineage of bat dogs. Derby, Chase, Rookie, and Dash. Rookie and Dash are at the helm now. Derby and Chase paved the way. A big shout out goes out to Eric Lipsman. He is our longest tenured front office member. He takes care of the dogs. He has been from the jump, and he makes sure that they're ready to go every day. He makes sure that they get their training appointments with Greenleaf, and that they're healthy, they're ready to go. And so yeah, we thought, everybody when they come to the ballpark, I mean, one of the first questions, if it's not where's Boomer, it's where are the dogs? Can we meet the dogs? And we all realized that in the front office, and our marketing team and our merchandise team got together, and it was kind of a no-brainer. We need to do something that is centered around the dogs. Dog lovers are everywhere. Golden retriever lovers especially are everywhere. And we'd be lying if we said we didn't have people that come to the ballpark just to see the bat dogs. That is a very real thing. We have people that buy tickets just to see the bat dogs. And so the Golden's idea comes to be, and it's how do we make our bat dogs the focal point? Well, we make a brand for them, and we give them a logo and an alternate identity, and we make the dog sort of a superhero look in one of the logos, and the other one is a very nice script logo that we have with our G hat that is debuted. So we have an alternate two different hats that we have with the Goldens. I love the jersey. I think it's such a clean look with the Goldens font across the chest, and then you'll see golden retrievers have a very specific type of tail. It's very bushy. It's almost like a feather duster, honestly, the way it swings behind them. That is kind of the script underlying where it says Goldens. It's a tail. It looks just like their tail. The font looks like golden retriever fur. The numbers on the back as well have a nice gold with a black trim on the back of them. And yeah, it all really just came down to, bat dogs have been such a big calling card here in Trenton and have been such a big part in this community that we need to honor our bat dogs, and we need to dive into this alternate identity.
When you're doing the play-by-play broadcast and the team is playing under an alternate identity, do you call them the Thunder, or do you call them by the temporary identity that they're playing under?
So I do my best to call them the identity that they are currently under. Every Friday night, we're not allowed to call them the Trenton Pork Roll due to licensing.
Oh.
So they are called the Thunder Pork Roll. So I can get away with saying the Thunder still at times on Pork Roll Fridays, but I do say largely, the pork roll trailing or the pork roll winning or leading something like that. Typically, I try to stay on that point, and then with the Goldens, we're allowed to call them the Trenton Goldens. So, I like I said, I try to stay in the moment, but every once in a while, I catch myself calling them still the Thunder on an alternate identity night, and it's like, oh man, you got to be better than that. So it happens.
I imagine that's hard, right? Like, and that's, you guys have a couple of alternate identities there, and but as more and more of them are introduced, I'm sure it gets more and more difficult. Mike, one more question for you before I let you get out of here. The prior logos, there were two other logos, one from 94 to '01 and then one from '02 to '07. The first one you referenced the Thunderbird. There is a like a letter T with a two-headed bird shooting lightning out of its two mouths. And then
Yep.
that was 94 to '01. And then '02 to '07 has a different letter T. And this time, I believe it's Thor, who
Yeah,
is
yeah.
okay. Thor is there holding a bolt of lightning sort of, wrapped around that
Hmm.
letter T. Those are, they are certainly brands that, you wouldn't see that style of design today. But from a retro brand standpoint, I'm imagining that those are probably fairly well remembered. Does the team do anything with those? Do you sell them in, do you have retro gear in the team store? Do you ever trot out the old Thunderbird or Thor logos?
So the Thunderbird logo is still very much part of our identity. It's still very available in the team store, online, in person. I actually own both of the hats. Again, I love Thunder merch. I don't know if you've been able to tell from this interview, but I love Thunder merch in all capacity. But I have both of the hats that they sell that used to be the on field hats back in the day. They offer a black hat with the Thunderbird logo with a royal blue bill, and then they do that as well with kind of a Kelly greenish bill that signifies the change in the pinstripe color. That original Thunderbird logo. It's actually funny because that Thunderbird logo, it's loved by so many people, whether you're in the front office, whether you're a fan in the area. You look at it and there's instant memories to being back at Trenton Thunder Ballpark in the '90s and the early 2000s and the late '90s, and you know that logo was voted as the worst logo in minor league baseball at one point, which is crazy to think about because
Yeah.
it's such a cool logo. And then in 2008, when the Thunder reimagined their logo and redesigned their logo, that was actually voted by minor league baseball in a new logo competition as the best redesigned logo in minor league baseball. So, and that's the logo that still is the Thunder main logo today. That cloud holding the lightning strike. So it's kind of funny how that works. And then the Thor logo, the Thunder do not have that available anymore. They kind of ran into some complications with Disney
Oh yeah.
with the Thor logo there. So we do not use that one anymore.
Pretty wild that Disney owns the God of Thunder. Pretty.
Yes.
That's,
Yeah.
that's I can honestly tell you that original 1994 Thunderbirds logo is not the worst logo in minor league baseball because I feel like I can say this now that they're defunct and they've moved. I have bit my tongue on this for a long time on this podcast, but the worst logo in minor league baseball belonged to the Mississippi Braves. That that one where they had the outline of the state of Mississippi and then like the sort of clip arty swoosh baseball coming out from
Yep.
that,
I
and then like
know which one you're talking about.
with like the drop shadow box that had like Times New Roman and Mississippi all caps in it. That was it had a gradient blend, it had clip art, it had everything. So I can definitely tell you that the worst logo in minor league baseball history, thankfully, thanks to the Columbus Clingstones, no longer exists because it was the Mississippi Braves. So, Mike, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk about all these great logos. I promise you have my solemn vow. I will get to a game in 2025. And Mike, where can
Thanks
people?
for having me on, Paul. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely, Mike. Where can people find you and the team online?
Absolutely. So you can head to any social media platform. You can find the Thunder online. Just type in Trenton Thunder, they'll pop up. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. Mike Warren underscore PXP. I believe that's my handle for both of them as well. And yeah, we're looking forward to the 2025 season. It's an exciting year ahead, and we've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up, and we're looking forward to filling the seats and seeing all the great fans back at Trenton Thunder Ballpark in 2025.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Listeners of this podcast may be familiar with the voice you're about to hear. One, Dan Simon of Studio Simon, the Louisville-based design firm responsible for so many great minor league baseball logos. As we were preparing for this interview, Dan Simon said to me, I've been doing this a long time. And guess what? We are going to talk about a logo that Dan created quite some time ago, 17 years ago, 18 years ago, in 2006. Dan Simon, welcome back to the podcast. Hello, how are you?
Well, first of all, hello to you, Paul. Thank you for asking. I am fantastic and really looking forward to talking about this one because, you mentioned in one of our recent Stumper recordings about how busy I am, and which I am indeed. And here I am a number of years into my career, and I'm still really busy doing it. So fortunately, I've been able to stay relevant. My goal when I'm doing a brand identity is for each one I do to be the best thing I've ever done. I'm not trying to rest on my laurels. I'm trying to get better and deliver to each one of my clients the best thing I've ever done. And to think that what we're about to discuss, I did 18 years ago, it's a little bit mind-blowing to me,
Yes, and this, it's interesting to see a logo that's been around this long in minor league baseball without being changed. And this is a team that's done, a lot of sort of fun alternates and that sort of thing. But this primary brand of theirs has remained unchanged since 2008, even as the team has changed classifications and all that sort of thing. So I'm interested to talk about this. In 2008, it was a different era in minor league baseball. You created a thundercloud logo wielding a lightning bolt like a baseball bat with a menacing, yellow eyes, and the sort of puffiness of the cloud sort of doubles as, shoulder and arm muscles. So, the first question that I always like to ask you about these brands that you create. What were some of the challenges? What were some of the considerations at a different time for minor league baseball?
Well, that's a really good question to start off with, because not only was it a different time for minor league baseball, but it was a different time for me. This was actually a pivotal brand identity in my sports brand identity development career. As with any project, then and now, before ever putting pencil to paper and mouse to pad, I had lengthy discussions with the team about their new identity. But there were some things I didn't ask, and we'll get into that. So the history of their logo was this. When they started out, they had a logo done that featured a two-headed thunderbird. And I remember it being derisively referred to by Baseball America magazine as Thunder Chicken. And that was not meant to be anything favorable. I believe not only did they refer to it as Thunder Chicken, but in the same breath said it was the worst logo in minor league baseball. They then changed that logo at some point to one that featured Thor. And from the looks of things, it was illustrated by the same person who illustrated the Thunder Chicken logo. And when I was brought in to do a brand update for them, one of the things they told me was that the reason at that time for the brand update mainly was just to improve the logo, but also because there were issues with Marvel about the similarity of their Thor character to Marvel's superhero Thor character. So when we were embarking on the development of this identity and putting the first round presentation together, there were three things I wanted to do. One was give them an option of a better Thor character that did not when you looked at it, immediately remind you of big screen Thor. Second thing I wanted to do was go revisit the Thunderbird and do a better Thunderbird. And then beyond that, what I wanted to do was show them things that they might not necessarily have been expecting, but would still be an effective, evocative way to represent thunder. Now, I have had occasion on this as a guest on this podcast several times before to mention Joe Bosack. Joe Bosack and I have, he's a fellow sports branding professional. He and I have been friends for many years, and it goes back before this Trenton Thunder identity, which, by the way, when you're talking about 17 or 18 years, it debuted on field in 2008, as you said. Work began on it. My first round presentation was done in November of 2006. So that's when we started. It continued into 2007, finished in 2007, took the field in 2008. But in addition to doing, a better Thor and a better Thunderbird, I was talking with Joe and we brainstormed other ways we can show thunder. Several things we talked about were drag racing motors. Like if anyone's ever been to a drag race, when they start up those engines, it makes a thunderous sound. It's deafening. So the thunder of those engines starting up. So that was one thing we considered. We thought about a gorilla pounding on its chest, the thundering sound it makes as it pounds on its chest. We thought about the eruption of a volcano, certainly a thundering sound. We even went so far as to consider two rams up in the Alps or wherever, the Dolomites or wherever rams butt heads, and they make this thundering, echoing clack of their horns crashing together, thundering through the mountains. And so of those four different ideas, I actually executed the gorilla pounding on its chest, the rams butting heads, and an erupting volcano. And I was really excited about the presentation, and I couldn't wait to hear their response. And what we heard was tantamount to crickets. Because as it turned out, they didn't want to rethink Thor. They didn't want to redo a Thunderbird, and they didn't want to depict thunder in a way that was not something that immediately came to mind. So at that point, they said, we want a thundercloud. Now, when I talk about this being a pivotal brand identity in my sports branding career, what I learned from that was, as well-intentioned as I was in showing them all of these different things, different ideas, different possibilities, things you might not necessarily think about right away, but could be potentially good directions, was find out if the client has any preconceived ideas of what they want this to be. Now, there are times that clients really have no idea off the bat what they're expecting to see. And then they're depending on me or whoever else they're working with to show them the possibilities. I presented, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different directions in that first round, none of which hit home.
Then the payoff all these years later might be, perhaps we can show those off on the Baseball by Design social media accounts. Are those do those exist in some sort of vector format that you can share and we can put out there on social media?
They do exist. I've got them right in front of me right now. I'm looking at them as we speak. And, because I've been a guest on this podcast so many times, forget the stumpers that I've now done over 100 times, but just as a guest, I've easily done, I've got to say, maybe 20 guest appearances. Yeah. I've not counted, but
got to go back and count.
15 to 20. I was doing a presentation at a sports branding conference 5 years ago. And one of the things I said to them, the presentation was basically the cutting room floor. It was, here are some things that were great ideas that didn't make it to the, prime time. And the thing I said was, just because something isn't chosen doesn't mean it's not a really good idea. And so there's some really, really good stuff on the cutting room floor. And I have to admit that there have been several occasions in the many years that I've been doing this that those cutting room floor directions, concepts have been resuscitated, brought back to life, and have lived on with another identity that they were equally as appropriate for. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, I mentioned I did a volcano. I still think that I'm looking at it right now, and I still think it's an anthropomorphized volcano. And if you saw it, I think you'd say that should be a minor league baseball logo. And I contacted the Salem Kaiser
That's what I
volcano,
was going to say.
and I said to them, I said, I've got a really good volcano identity, and if you guys might be in the market for a brand update, I'd like to share this with you. And they just said, no, we're good. So, but somewhere out there, there's potentially a volcano theme that I've got you.
When the Greenville Gorillas come around, when they come knocking, you're going to be like, oh, here, let me work something up for you. And it's sitting right there in your Trenton Thunder file. All right, well, that's fair, Dan. You're going to keep those in your back pocket. So we'll hopefully see them out there in the form of other teams' identities someday. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was when a team comes to you with an idea like that, and like, this is what we're looking for. We want a thundercloud, we want, more sort of literal representation. What is your responsibility as a designer to talk with them about existing brands where there's a similarity? And obviously in this situation, I'm talking about another team that had a thundercloud brand that was around in the 90s, and then they've since updated and they've ditched their thundercloud. But the Lake Elsinore Storm had a thundercloud and a lightning bolt in their logo, and you run the risk of, oh well, something like that already exists. What's your role as a designer to say to the team, sure, you're the client, I'll mock up what you want, and just be advised, hey, there's this other team out there that has something kind of similar?
That I really like that question, because that was the case here. And whenever I'm doing a brand identity, ideally, the goal is to do something that's never been done before. An example of that is the Kannapolis Cannonballers. There is no human cannonball brand identity out there. Now,
Right.
the odds of being able to do that on every project are not only minuscule, it's impossible, because there's almost nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
So if you can't do something that's never been done before, then something that's only been done, a theme that's only been done a very small handful of times. Example of that would be the Rome Emperors. There's the Pittsburgh Penguins. Okay, there's one, and it's escaping me right now, but there's a college whose team is the Penguins. But beyond that, they're not ubiquitous. Now, storm cloud logos there's not a ton of them, but there's enough of them out there that it's been done a bunch of times already. So what I'm charged with then is two things. Number one, make sure that whatever storm cloud I do is not reminiscent of an already existing storm cloud logo. The second thing is do it better. Now, let me just mention one other thing about something I've experienced. There was a college that came to me whose athletic teams were the Hawks. And one of the things I said to them was, that's a really tough identity to do, because there are so many hawks, and in addition to hawks, other birds of prey on the sports branding landscape, both professional, major league and minor league, as well as collegiate. There are tons of birds of prey. I said, we really run the risk of your logo looking like something that's already out there. And you run that risk. The risk you are under is twofold. One is that it's going to look derivative. Okay. And people are going to go, oh, that reminds me of the Philadelphia Eagles, or oh, that reminds me of the Temple Owls, etc. The other risk is a legal risk, because I know somebody who innocently did a collegiate sports brand identity for a bird of prey. The logo was done in the can and unveiled by the college. And when it was, another college cried foul. Foul, get it? F-O-W-L.
That's pretty good, Dan.
Cried foul and said, your logo looks too similar to ours. Now, the reality is it did look similar, but I know the designer who did this, and it was completely innocent. But although it was innocent, I know this designer that he did not copy that other team's logo. But what he had to do on his own dime was completely redo their identity. It was still the same bird of prey, but he had to make it look completely different from the college that issued them a cease and desist. So that's kind of a long answer, but I think a really important answer to your question is urge the client to do something unique. If they don't want to do something unique, then you have to make sure you as the designer has to make sure that it is different enough and hopefully better than anything else in that general theme that already exists out there.
Dan, I want to ask you about one mark in particular before I let you go here, and you know that I could talk about this all day. I wanted to ask you about the cap logo that you created, because I feel like I've been seeing the team use this a lot more. This cap logo, rather than it being a thundercloud holding a lightning bolt, it's a lightning bolt holding a baseball bat, and it's really endearing, right? Like it's a lightning bolt, but it's got this sort of iconic Dan Simon sneer on its face. It looks like a crime fighting duo, right? Like this cloud and this lightning bolt both wielding things that they're gonna, whack the robbers with. When you were creating that lightning bolt character, was it meant to sort of work alongside this character, or like are they meant to be seen together, or was it meant to be sort of a standalone thing?
Let's pull back the curtain, shall we, Paul?
Let's do it, Dan. Let's see how the sausage is made behind the curtain. I think we're mixing metaphors here, but let's hear it.
Okay, well, this is going to the answer to where did this lightning bolt come from goes back to a friend of the show, Greg Coleman.
Oh yeah.
So I had mentioned that after the first round presentation, the team had come back to me, specifically General Manager Brad Taylor. He is the general manager now of the El Paso Chihuahuas, which was featured on your podcast early on in your podcast. He was not a guest, but Greg Coleman was. He's the president of the Erie Seawolves, and he's been on for that episode and maybe mentioned another time or two. Done a lot of work with Greg. So anyway, Brad had told me they're looking for a storm cloud. I mentioned we started this in November of 2006. At the winter meetings, which would have been December 2006, we were at some event with a number of people. I was sitting next to Greg Coleman. I had known Greg for years from his previous time with the Modesto A's and the Golden Baseball League. And now he was the assistant GM in Trenton. He had just started there like a year or two before. And he pulled me aside and he said, would you do me a favor? Would you do a lightning bolt, anthropomorphize a lightning bolt? I think that could work for this identity. So I did that, but they ultimately went with the storm cloud that became, the focal point of the brand identity. But the lightning bolt made it as an alternate logo. And then they also did a mascot based on that lightning bolt.
I've got an ice cream helmet with on it.
Yeah. So that was Greg Coleman's baby. And here it is all these years later, still being seen on field and mentioned on podcasts.
It's a shame, Dan, that you guys didn't end up going with that Thor-based character, because I got to admit, Chris Hemsworth has been dying to come on this podcast. He was like, hey, Paul, and his Australian accent, what about this Thunder episode? And I was like, I can't, as conflicts with Marvel. So Chris is going to have to wait till another day. But you're only going to have to wait, Dan, for like several minutes before you come back here with your Studio Simon Stumper. Dan, thank you so much for coming on and chatting about this. You opened up the vault here, Dan, and talked to, we went into the Wayback Machine, almost 2 decades. Incredible to think about how long you've been doing this. Thank you for coming on and chatting about the Thunder. And hey, we'll see you in a few minutes.
Yes, see you then. I hope you listeners out there enjoyed some of that discussion because, as I mentioned, this one identity actually played a very important part in frankly, my professional development.
Well, whether folks enjoyed it or not, you get paid the same either way, Dan. So it's I think it works out. Hey, you can find Studio Simon on Instagram at @studio_Simon. Dan, we'll see you in a few minutes.
See you then.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am very pleased to have on the podcast Scott Rippey, who you may know, especially if you're in the upper Midwest, from the Facebook page Rippeyology. Scott, good morning. Hello, how are you doing?
Good morning, Paul. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing very well. I think folks will understand fairly shortly why it is that I'm having you on to talk about the Trenton Thunder, even though you are not in New Jersey, you are in Wisconsin. If you don't mind, tell us about what Rippeyology is.
So Rippeyology is a Facebook page that is devoted to weather in the upper Midwest, in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois. And then there's some fun that goes along with that page as well. It's a community right now that's 40,000 strong. There's a little bit of occasionally some adult humor on the page.
Mm-hmm.
But no, there's a lot of weather education involved in Rippeyology, as well as, obviously insights and outlooks for weather events that may be coming up in the near future.
Well, I found you through my childhood friend, Scott Rogers. So thank you to Scott Rogers for putting us in touch. Weather education, you have a passion. I know that, we talked before we started recording here that you have a long history in marketing. You've certainly got the radio pipes going on here. Where did your passion for weather come from?
When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I think for Christmas, my grandmother bought me a book. And, so it was a children's book, but it was about weather. And it was about how you count the seconds between thunder and lightning in order to determine the distance that storm is away from you.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's genius. And at the time, my family had the local newspaper, the Milwaukee Journal, delivered to the house every day. And I started cutting out the weather maps and the forecasts every day out of the newspaper, and I would scrapbook them. And then when tomorrow's paper came out, I went back to see how close they were on their forecast. So I was a six-year-old fact checker for meteorologists in the Milwaukee area. And I just, over the years, and then later on in life, the Weather Channel came on cable, and I could sit and watch the Weather Channel for years and years on end, just hook, line, and sinker. And I started learning, and then I started reading books, and then we had the advent of the internet, and I started researching there. So it's really been a self-taught thing for me throughout my entire life, and it's super rewarding for me now to be able to turn that into a job instead of just a hobby.
Absolutely. Well, and so, I know that you're a big baseball fan. There are a number of teams out there that are named for weather. You've got the Lake Elsinore Storm out in California, obviously the Trenton Thunder here that this episode is focusing on. In the larger sports world, in the major leagues, you've got the Miami Heat, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Avalanche here in Colorado. There's the San Jose Earthquakes, are a soccer team. Are there weather events that you think lend themselves the best to being, to serving as a sports mascot?
I think it sort of depends on where you are. It depends a little bit on where you're located, right? Not to take anything away at all from the Trenton Thunder, but 90% of the country could have a baseball team calling themselves the Thunder, and people would go, "Oh yeah, we have thunder here. The Thunder's here." So when you take something that's a little bit more locally true,
Mhm.
right? That represents something unique about the geography, something unique about the culture. Um, I think from a weather standpoint, I think somebody is missing out on fog.
Oh,
There is, I've read research studies actually about how people romanticize certain weather phenomenon. And fog is one of the things that people romanticize.
hmm.
People have a positive vibe about fog.
Yeah, and certainly in the major professional sports and in minor league baseball, I don't know of any team called the Fog. I'll bet you if we were to Google it, we'd find something somewhere.
Right.
We're gonna get a message on social media here. Yeah, but what about? But in the certainly in the major professional and in minor league baseball, we don't have any Fog teams out there. Let's talk about this Trenton Thunder logo. One of the things that I note when I look at this is this logo has a storm cloud and it has a lightning bolt. It's hard to visually represent thunder, I guess, because it's a sound, not a sight.
I think on the Trenton logo, I think all they have to do is animate it. They have to shake that cloud,
Mm.
give it a little wiggle back and forth from left to right to denote the thunder.
It just makes me think where we're going with the visual aesthetics of sports right now. We're probably not that far from having animated jerseys, uniforms, logos, headwear on the field, right? Like rotating ads on shoulder patches or something on uniforms. That's probably not that far off right now.
Yeah, probably particularly in caps, in
Yeah.
hats, because that's an easy small chip to embed in
Hmm.
the bill of the cap.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe a little bit harder on uniforms, especially if somebody slides onto that chip.
Yeah.
But
That's right.
but yeah, and you don't want to necessarily over commercialize it.
Well,
But
we fans don't want that.
right, but you do want to make that mascot and that team name a part of the DNA of the team. Right? It's not just a name.
Right.
It's part of a DNA. So, on the other hand, University of Miami Hurricanes, and let's be real, there are not a lot of people who have a positive association with the word hurricane.
This is another marketing question I have for you, and it's one of the dangers that you see with baseball teams named for weather phenomenon. Years ago, this 10 years ago, I was doing a baseball road trip with a buddy, my friend Jeremy, and we went to some Southern California teams, and we went to see the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes. And we did this sort of funny thing with one of the players where we pretended like there was an earthquake, and then the next day there was an earthquake. And yeah, exactly. And so we had this, what we thought was kind of a funny, whimsical video that we couldn't use, right? And it wasn't a terrible earthquake, and I don't think there were any casualties from it or anything like that. But it was still just sort of like, oh, yeah, this is scary and terrible, and we're putting it on a baseball jersey. There's a risk in that from a marketing perspective, yeah?
Yeah, from a psychological perspective, I mean, words have meaning, and it may be different from person A to person B to person C.
Yeah.
I think the reason that a lot of people use weather phenomenon in their team names is because it's it's easy to use words that sound strong and intimidating, right?
Right.
Words like thunder,
Hmm.
maybe call to mind a power hitting team.
You're getting into what I feel like is the most important question about this conversation, which is what is it about thunder? And this is, it's abstract. We're thinking outside the box here. What are the qualities of thunder and storms and lightning that would make it a good baseball player?
Would make a good baseball player. I mean, it's certainly a power hitter
Yeah.
for sure. Weather does like sort of give you a sense of unpredictability.
Hmm.
Like, what's this guy gonna do next?
Oh, I like that a lot. All right. I thought that was going to be my last question for you, but I actually have one more question for you. I've been to two games in Milwaukee. One the first time they had the roof closed, and I objected to it vehemently because so far as I could tell, it was a beautiful day. I don't know. I mean, maybe there was the threat of thunderstorms. And then I went back and we went into the ball game, and it was it was again a beautiful day. Roof was closed, and I was sort of being snarky about it. And then as we left the ball game, I didn't realize this. I couldn't hear it. I didn't know that it was happening. It was pouring. It was pouring rain, and I didn't realize it because we were under a roof, and we had to sprint to the car, and it was, it was I was grateful for the roof on that second game. So, but I'm curious, as a weather professional and a baseball fan, what's your feeling on baseball in the elements? Are you a fan of the domes, the stadiums with the retractable roofs, or would you rather just see baseball played in the elements?
Play it all in the elements, man. I prefer to play in the elements. I grew up, also a big football fan, and so watching the Packers play in the snow um, and in the rain, and the infamous, was it Philadelphia, Dallas, the big fog bowl?
I think that was the Eagles in Chicago. That was the Bears and the Eagles. I remember that from when I was a kid. Yeah.
That was hilarious to watch on
Yeah.
TV. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I wish I was there."
It was very frustrating to watch as an Eagles fan because it negated some of our weapons, and the Eagles, I believe, lost that game. I thought this used to be a more whimsical observation than it is now. But when the Tampa Bay Rays changed their branding from having the Devil Ray animal to a ray of sunshine, I always thought it was sort of ironic that they played in a domed stadium, a fixed dome stadium that never saw the sunshine. So the only sun you saw at a Rays game was on their logo. Scott, this has been a ton of fun. I think you and I could sit here and talk baseball and minor leagues and weather all day long. I appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you online? We've talked about Rippeology. How do people get there?
Just go to Facebook. If you have a Facebook account, just go to Facebook and search Rippeology, Rippeology, and just follow along. It's free. And if you decide you want to also get involved if you like what you see and you want to get involved in the subscription model, feel free to do that at a later time. But we'd love to have you in the community. We do have a lot of fun.
For some PG-13 weather forecasting, especially if you're in the upper Midwest. Scott, thank you so much. This has been fun.
Thanks, Paul. Much appreciated.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time once again for my favorite segment, your favorite segment. Dan Simon of Studio Simon is here, as he is every week, with one of his trivia questions that we call Studio Simon Stumpers. Dan, good morning. Hello, how are you?
Good morning to you, Paul. I am fantastic, thank you. How's Paul Caputo this morning?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. Feeling invigorated right now after a 6-mile run in 15 degrees. It was 15 degrees here in Colorado when my buddy Chris and I headed out on our run this morning.
Well, it was 15 degrees when I headed out on my walk to work this morning. So we're cold here as well.
Speaking of weather, Dan, we've been talking this episode about the Trenton Thunder, and you've already been on this episode as the designer of that Trenton Thunder logo, and now you have prepared a Studio Simon Stumper, a trivia question that centers around, I don't know, weather, New Jersey, anthropomorphic clouds. We'll see where you're going to go with it.
We are not going to go in any of those directions you mentioned.
This is why I never try to research in advance of these. I never try to prepare for Studio Simon Stumpers because there's just nothing that I could ever do.
Yeah, I am a baffler. Okay, so let's talk about minor league baseball in Trenton. It goes all the way back to 1883 when Trenton had a charter franchise in the Interstate Association. But then there was a period where there was no minor league baseball until 1936. And from 1936 through 1950, they had minor league baseball. Then there was another break in the action, and baseball returned to Trenton in 1994 with the relocation of the London, that's London, Ontario, Canada, London Tigers to the New Jersey State Capitol. But let's go back to those 1936 through to 1950 years. Something of note occurred. Specifically, a notable future Hall of Famer would play in Trenton. Now, are you familiar with the Terry Cashman song "Talkin' Baseball"?
Yes.
Okay.
As parodied on The Simpsons talking softball.
Talking softball, right.
Yeah.
So I would, that song goes all the way back to 1981. So there are going to be some of your listeners who are not familiar with that song. But when that song came out, it was pretty darn popular, wouldn't you say?
I think probably it was. I was 8 in 1981. So, it was, for me, it was popularized by The Simpsons.
Oh, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
now the full title of that song, it's Talking Baseball, and then in parens, Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. That's because there is in the chorus, it ends with they knew them all from Boston to Dubuque, especially Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. Okay, I would sing that, but it would not go over well with your listeners' ears. So our studio Simon Stumper today asks, which of these Hall of Famers made his affiliated minor league baseball debut in Trenton?
Hmm.
Was it Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, or the Duke Snyder?
It's funny because I have sort of a strong inclination. I don't have any real way of knowing, right? Like I don't know where any of those players began their minor league careers. I feel like maybe Willie Mays I should know, but I don't. But for reasons unknown to me, Dan, I am compelled, I am drawn to the answer of Duke Snyder.
Okay, well, that is not the correct answer. The correct answer is Willie Mays,
Oh.
who became the first black player to ever play in the league in which Trenton played. So he played, this was 1950. It was the Class B Interstate League,
Okay.
Trenton Giants.
All right.
In 81 games, the Say Hey Kid batted .353 with 20 doubles, 8 triples, 4 home runs, and 55 RBIs. Pretty decent season. The next year, check this out. The next year, he started in AAA with the Minneapolis Millers, where he hit .477 with 8 home runs and 30 RBIs in just 35 games. And then he was called up to the New York Giants before the end of the season. And he actually pretty early in the season, because he went on to win the 1951 National League Rookie of the Year award. So, and it all started in Trenton. Now, technically, it started in Birmingham, where he briefly played for the Birmingham Black Barons. But he only played a handful of games with them. He was really young. He was something like 16 or 7, probably 17. He was really young when he played for them. So, but affiliated baseball started in Trenton.
Well, I wonder if I could have tried to suss a little better there. That fact of him being the first black player in that league feels notable, and perhaps something that more people should know. And now, guess what, Dan? More people do know, thanks to Studio Simon Stumpers
and the Baseball by Design podcast.
Well, Dan, that was a good one. I will try to do a little more sussing next time. And my instincts are just clearly off this morning. We'll see if I can do better next week.
Yep, better luck next time, as they say, and I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you then.
See you in a week, Dan.